The colors, we are set to go.
Let's roll, boys. Come on, let's get going.
We are kicking.
Here we go.
Both guys, 5 minutes each for fighting.
Watch the blue. Play the puck. We're not doing this.
Hey. After further review, it's the Scouting the Refs podcast.
Yeah, baby.
Here's your hosts, Todd Lewis and Josh Smith.
Okay, gentlemen, play ball.
Let's go.
All right, guys, let's drop the puck.
Josh, I don't want to get ahead of ourselves. I don't want to get too excited, but I think we're about to start the Stanley Cup Final. What's it been, 3-4 months since our last hockey game?
Oh my God, it's like walking through the desert without water, just looking for an oasis. We've been trekking across this wasteland for weeks, months without a hockey game. I feel like it's been forever.
And it should only take about another 4 or 5 weeks to complete the final with the schedule that they've put out with days off in between, don't you think?
Hey, nothing like finishing the Stanley Cup Final when everyone's at the beach, at the pool on the weekends. You're getting outside. It's 100 degrees out and there's hockey to be played.
Yeah, okay, all right. This is the Scouting the Refs podcast. Please make sure you follow on the social channels. You get Josh at Scouting the Refs on both X and on Instagram. I'm on X and Instagram at Todd Lewis Sports. Coming up on this week's episode, the Cup Crew getting handsy, AMA on Reddit, rule changes, and showing the refs some love, because I don't think referees get enough love and attention, don't you?
Attention, yes, but love, not so much.
Okay, you make a really good point there. Congratulations to the 4 referees and the 4 lines persons that will officiate the Stanley Cup Final. Here they are. Steve Kazari, Jean Hebert, Dan O'Rourke, and Chris Rooney are the referees. Working the lines, Devin Berg, Ryan Daisy, Matt McPherson, and Johnny Murray. There are some notable names absent from this list, Josh. There's no Kelly Sutherland officiating.
Amazing to not have Sudsy in the lineup. He's been one of the standbys, one of the go-tos when it comes to Cup Finals. He leads all active officials in playoff games worked. He leads in Stanley Cup Final games. He's been there a bunch of times and surprisingly won't be there this season. I mean, it opens the door for a guy like Jean Hebert, who's working just his second Cup Final. So you get that. And the other vacancy, if you want to call it that, is the missing Wes McCauley, who was injured late in the first round. Hamstring injury has had him sidelined for the rest of the playoffs, which is really unfortunate. It's been, I think, 12, 13 years we've gone. He's only missed 1 Cup Final, and that was also because of an injury. So McCauley and Sutherland have been like 1 and 2 in the league. Even when they do player polls for the league's top officials, it's often those guys. So it feels kind of strange, Todd, to not have either one of them working this year's Stanley Cup Final.
Do you think after the Stanley Cup Final, the officials will have like a locker clean-out day where we'll get to hear comments from them and we'll hear about Wes McCauley and what's been ailing him?
Oh, I'd love to hear that. I mean, it'd be like a luggage clean out day because they don't have a dedicated space, but you'd love to hear it. And, we don't hear, and I think sometimes fans don't appreciate what the officials go through when it comes to injuries and the stuff you're dealing with. They've got stuff all season long and you often don't hear it. I mean, they rotate around, so the schedules are hard to follow unless you're like us keeping tabs on who's working where and who haven't we seen in a while and where's a guy been. But for most of the teams, players, coaches, fans, I think they just wait for that guy to come up in the rotation, but they don't necessarily realize that officials deal with injuries, whether it's a collision, whether it's just a skating injury or a pulled muscle or things like that happen throughout the season that these guys battle through. You take a guy like Justin St. Pierre, hasn't worked a game all season, and hopefully he's on track to recover for the start of next season. But I think it's easy to miss that officials have to deal with those types of injuries, those types of things, and we don't even get upper body, lower body. We get nothing. Nobody acknowledges that a guy's injured. It just doesn't work. He doesn't show up in the rotation. But when it comes to things like even Wes McCauley or guys that didn't make the cut, you'd love to hear after the playoffs that, he was one of our top picks, but he was injured, so we couldn't advance him, or he was dealing with something. And I feel like you throw the guys a bone here to feel like they didn't just miss the cut because of performance issues, but maybe there's other stuff going on. So hopefully McCauley heals up fine and is good in time for next season. Hopefully everybody's healthy. They can recover this offseason. And maybe, Todd, maybe we'll get a little more transparency, but I wouldn't hold your breath, even around officials' injuries.
I'm sure McCauley will be in good voice again next year. And hey, let's give a shout out to Devin Berg, who's working the lines for the first time in the Stanley Cup Final.
Yeah, congrats to him. I mean, he's been to the conference finals 3 times over the past 6 seasons. So you look at guys like him who've been to the highest, the second highest level a couple times. When are they going to break through? When are they going to get to work their first Cup Final? And Berg's done it 8 seasons in the league. He's making his Cup Final debut. You get Ryan Daisy, 7 seasons with his second. So you've got these guys, the younger ones who are really, I mean, no offense, Matt McPherson, Johnny Murray, more veterans, but you look at the young guys that are coming up, but like I don't want to call them your rookie class because they have been around for a few years, but the younger officials of, who's going to carry the torch of being the go-to linesman. So Berg and Daisy making a good run at it, and best of luck to them working the Stanley Cup final. If I had to guess, Todd, we're going to pair them up. I'm expecting a Johnny Murray, Devin Berg pairing and a Matt McPherson, Ryan Daisy pairing because that's how it works in the Stanley Cup final. Typically, we have two ref pairs, two linesman pairs. So we'll see who gets paired up on the ref side. Is it going to be Hebert Kozari? Is it going to be Kozari O'Rourke? And then those pairs will stick together. And then if we hit game 7, all bets are off. And then we shuffle them up and we pick the top officials. But the pairings make it a little bit more interesting because instead of just the officials' tendencies, you're going to look at how they worked as a pair. And they'll get multiple games in the series. So when you get the same crew for the odd numbered games, you start to understand what to expect. And at this point in the playoffs, typically, it doesn't mean a whole lot of penalties, which also means we don't get a whole lot of power plays. So if you're a team that's dependent on the power play, you'll learn real quick whether or not this is working out to your advantage and if you have to change your style of play in the Cup final.
This is where the how are they going to officiate it arguments begin prior to the Stanley Cup final, I guess. And as you noted, the final game between the Rangers and Florida was just one penalty each, and it was just a handful of penalties as well in Dallas and Edmonton.
Yeah, you look at the percentage and the percentage of the likelihood of an automatic penalty like puck over glass or too many men on the ice, those become critical plays because there are so far fewer other calls. You get one penalty per team or two penalties per team. That puck over glass is a huge one. And that's why it seems disproportionate in the playoffs because the calls go down. But people say it's an effect of the officials that they're calling less, they pocket their whistles. It's also a function of what the teams are doing because the coaches don't want to take any chances. The players don't want to take chances. As things tighten up, I think we see it. And I'll call on Kelly Sutherland. I know he's not working the Cup final, but as a great example of a guy who will let things go or will pocket the whistles as long as neither team is getting an advantage from it. And he sets that standard and communicates that early on. Here's how I'm calling the game. We're letting this play. And he's pretty consistent when it comes to it. So it'll be up to the coaches and the players on both teams to figure out where's that line so that we can avoid getting into penalty trouble because the penalty calls might be few. That I expect them to be balanced, but very limited. And man, that puck over glass will come back to haunt you every time because there's nothing they can do. They've got to call that one. And when you've only got one or two other penalties, it makes it a very, very big penalty call.
One little bit of leftover business from the Western Conference final between Edmonton and Dallas before we move on and get into a couple of other things. In game 6, you posted a clip from the game that appeared to be a missed call. We see players that will close their hand on the puck and then drop it immediately at their skates. And that happens with great regularity. It's not a big deal. It's fine. But normally when a player grabs the puck and then shifts to drop it into a more favorable position so that they gain possession, it's just that extra second or two that is quite often enough to draw the whistle and get penalized. But it didn't happen to Connor McDavid in game 6.
It didn't, and it should have. So this is one of those situations where we don't want officials pocketing the whistles or making non-calls for a play that deserves it. And this one did. I mean, hey, McDavid's a talented player. All eyes are on him. He has the puck. The officials are watching. Now, what their angle was, because there was a player along the boards there. You've got his back potentially blocking his glove. So you can't always see exactly what happened. And you don't always have the camera angle that we had on the replay, which was extremely helpful in showing that McDavid gloves the puck out of the air, but he doesn't immediately drop it. He pivots with it, he moves and turns to get away from a defender, then drops it to the ice. Rule 67 specifically says that a player shall be permitted to catch the puck out of the air, but must immediately place it or knock it down to the ice. Otherwise, he's getting a minor for closing his hand on the puck. We've seen penalties called for this amount of puck holding, as McDavid did, so far this season. We've seen penalties called for closing your hand on the puck in the crease for a similar amount of closing your hand here. So it definitely should have been whistled down. It's that step, it's that pause, it's that turn, as you alluded to when you're introing this piece of you have to do it immediately. If he catches it and drops it and plays it, it's fine. But when you turn, when you pivot to get an advantage or to move away from the opposing player, because 67-2-1 says if you catch it and skate with it to avoid a check or gain a territorial advantage, he's doing that. He's not moving far, but he's pivoting his body. He's positioning himself along the boards and he's dropping it in a favorable spot where he can then resume playing it off to his right. And it's a smart play. It's an instinctive play, but it is one that does deserve a minor penalty, even for Connor McDavid.
Yes, especially. Okay. He's good enough. All right. Let's mention that there is also other hockey going on besides the Stanley Cup playoffs and the finals that are finally going to get underway. The ECHL final is going on right now, and one of the officials involved has a relationship with an NHL official, and that would be Austin O'Rourke. And if O'Rourke sounds familiar, it's because Dan O'Rourke is an NHL official, but Austin is going to work the KC Mavericks and Florida Everblades final. This is the Everblades going for 3 in a row, by the way, in the ECHL.
Yeah, it's pretty exciting. I could not find a time in history, and I'm not. I'll give you, Todd. I wasn't digging into the annals of all of the hockey world, but just to find any situation where we had an official in the NHL Stanley Cup Finals and his son working in the ECHL's Cup Finals. So really interesting to see both guys. I mean, you have to think that there's a dream there that you could have O'Rourke and O'Rourke officiating an NHL game together. When you've got Austin, obviously one of the top officials working in the ECHL, his dad's working the Cup Final. You got that pedigree, that history, that familiarity with him. I I have to imagine that there's the possibility that we could be seeing a father-son officiating do in the National Hockey League, and haven't had that before. So hey, we might not be far off from history here. I'd love to see it happen. It'd be great.
Think about the promotional opportunities for this. This could easily be done during the preseason next year. You've got the Kraft Hockeyville games. How cool would that be?
Oh man, just to have that. I mean, it's cool that we have brothers. We've got the Garlitz brothers manning the lines. We had Paul and Greg Dvorsky, Paul the referee, Greg the linesman. So we've had siblings working together. We've had father and son working in the league or at different times, but to work a game together, such a cool moment. And I think you're right, Todd. I think there would be a great opportunity to do it. It'd be a great story just to go back and see because both of them came up as players too. You had I mean, Dan played in the ECHL, then now has worked his way to the NHL as an official, and then his son switched from playing to officiating as well. It would be a really great story, and I think something that I don't know the way the cards fall, and we'll see what happens over the next few years. But Dan's got some gas left in the tank, and Austin appears to be on the rise. So perhaps.
They just announced the Amazon behind the scenes show the other day.
Yeah.
So this is the perfect opportunity for it. Let's talk about some rule changes that are looking to happen in the NCAA having to do with head contact. First of all, it's now going to require a major and a game misconduct. There's still a minor penalty option added in there. Take us through how that's shaping up and looks like it's going to be moving forward with the NCAA.
Yeah, so in the past it was up to the officials' discretion. Now they're looking to hit a little bit harder when it comes to head contact, and at the same time give the officials a bit more of an option. So when we're looking at a minor penalty for head contact that happens on an otherwise legal hit, there's an opportunity to give a penalty that's not as strong. So right now you've got that major, and maybe you tack on the game depending. You'll have the opportunity in the future. If you call the major, you're getting the game automatically. But now maybe it gets downgraded. Maybe it can be a minor penalty because there was head contact, but it wasn't intentional, or it was secondary in nature because it was an otherwise legal body check. So you do have a position where you now start to build that separation between intent, maybe, or what a player's trying to do, more of what we see in the NHL, where I feel like the NCAA was pretty strict around head contact, especially in the Frozen Four, seeing some of those plays that you saw a guy getting a major penalty for head contact where perhaps it was inadvertent or he didn't mean to, or you have two guys running into each other at center ice, and you have a shoulder into a head. He had no idea it was coming, but you still get a major penalty for it. So this gives the officials a little more flexibility on how they can assess those penalties when you tack on the game automatically, but now you give them the minor for head contact or even a minor penalty for hitting from behind, which was not the case last season.
All right. There are some changes as well coming to pucks that are played with a high stick. And again, that's going to align with how the National Hockey League does it.
It will, but they've gone a step further in the NCAA. And I was actually surprised. I had to reread the rule a couple times to make sure I was getting this right. So the old college rule was 4 foot high crossbar. if you're playing the puck, not just on a goal, but playing the puck with a high stick, that was where the line was. If it's above crossbar height, it's a high stick. They're changing that standard to what the NHL rule is, that it's shoulder height. So now you can bat a puck out of the air as long as it's shoulder height or below. The NCAA rules update says that this standard will also apply to goals. So unlike the NHL, the NCAA is getting a bit more permissive when it comes to high stick deflection goals. I'm hot and cold on this, Todd. I think
Yeah.
we're potentially we'll get more goals being scored, but it is not always easy to judge stick height relative to a player's shoulders. And you think the tall guys get an advantage here. Everybody else used to have to deal with that 4-foot line, and now it's like having a taller strike zone. You've got more room to deflect that puck down. So I think it'll be interesting to see in college hockey this upcoming season how that rule change affects tipped in goals around the net, and if it's something that the NHL might want to keep an eye on.
Absolutely. I don't know. It seems as if they're kind of going away from real. It's on or it's off, or it's a high stick or it's not a high stick. It's going to be a little tougher to judge, and that's going to bring in more scrutiny, which
Right.
sometimes is good, but also if it's just this is the way it is and we have to call it this way, sometimes that works better.
Yeah, I think having the different standard, it's good and it's bad. I think
Yeah.
you learn how to adapt, and that's what you go by. And I think there's some logic to the NHL's rule in that you're deflecting a puck with a high stick at center ice, and it depends on your shoulder because that's going to affect how you're carrying the stick and what you're trying to do. And you also have some more space typically around the net. Though everybody's shooting at the goal, which is 4 feet high, so having that standard of a 4 foot high deflection feels like it's logical. Be interesting to see how this plays out.
They are also going to lessen the punishment, if you will, because they are removing the delayed penalty enforcement. Tell us how that's going to work.
You know what? I'm surprised, and this is one of the ones that we've talked about it on the podcast before. It's a situation where I'm not even sure I like the NHL's rule on it. It was something where I'm kind of a fan of what the NCAA has done. So you have a delayed penalty coming up, right? You've got possession of the puck, you pull your goalie, you've got the delayed call, you score a goal. In college hockey, that penalty still happens. You're still putting a guy in the box. You're still getting a power play out of it. So you can score on the delayed penalty. Technically, it's not a power play goal. The power play hasn't
Right.
started yet. So you score that goal. It doesn't affect the upcoming power play, and you still get 2 minutes. That's something that they are changing. They're getting rid of that for the upcoming season. So I don't have numbers on how many delayed penalty goals were scored. I'd be curious to see what the volume is here, but I don't know. I always thought it made sense that you're not on the power play, so why do you lose your power play goal? And my compromise, Todd, if we had to do it, and personally, this is what I'd love to see them do. If you are going to lose the power play because you scored a goal, and we're going to treat it like it was a power play goal, we got to stop letting players get off the hook. I want the guy to go to the box and serve his 2 minutes. We'll still play 5-on-5. We can play 5-on-5 for the rest, the remaining 2 minutes, but that guy's got to sit in the box until the next stoppage after his 2 minutes is up because he's not out of jail. He committed the infraction. So
Sure.
we won't award a power play, but let's give him a penalty. But that's not the way it works, and that's not the way it's going to work in college hockey for the upcoming season. So
Yeah.
it will be interesting to see as the teams who benefited from those delayed penalty goals and teams with a strong power play will have part of that advantage removed for 2024-25.
Yeah, that's too bad. I like the double jeopardy kind of
Yeah.
aspect to it as well. So we should give some stick taps to some award winners in the Ontario Hockey League. The Bodie has been awarded to longtime official Dustin McCrank. The full name is the Ken Bodensteel Awards for passion and dedication to the profession. Well done. The ECHL also honors an official with the Ryan Birmingham Memorial Award, also for dedication, goes to linesman Chuck Schammel. And in the WHL, referee Jeff Ingram gets the Al Paradis Trophy. We have broached this subject before, but why no love for the refs in the NHL? They should have an award, something for them. I don't know what you call it, the referee, something simple, but I want to see a giant headshot of an official on the Sphere in Vegas when they do the ceremony.
Oh my God, that would be great. I agree with you. I think it's a big miss for the National Hockey League. I know they don't want to put refs as feature. They don't want to draw attention to them. They don't have any issue highlighting them when they're mic'd up or when they post them on YouTube, making a memorable call. So let's recognize the guys who are doing a good job. I don't care how you want to do it. The KHL has golden whistle. One goes to the referee, one goes to the linesman. Best ones of the year. I'd be fine with something like that. Even you want to do charitable contributions, effect on the game away from the ice. A lot of these guys give back in the summers with camps and workshops and helping develop younger officials. So I'd love to see the officials get some recognition. Personally, Todd, I think we need to hand out some hardware. I'll go with the best referee getting the Bill Chadwick Trophy at the end of the year.
Nice.
And best linesman, I'll do the Scampy. We'll the Ray Scapinello Trophy.
Oh, that's perfect. Oh, we got it. Oh, yes, we're absolutely championing this going forward. Let's wrap up with a fun video that you can check out on the Scouting the Refs website. Josh has posted it up, and it's a nice official in stripes doing the AMA Ask Me Anything seminar. It's insightful, clarifying. If you've got an awful lot of answers, I was really surprised when I watched this video to find out that Commissioner Gary Bettman leads the refs in relaxing meditation exercises. I had no idea that happened.
Yeah, yoga, stretching, all of this. It was man, it was a hysterical video. So obviously a big fan of the hockey guy on YouTube, but he decided to take off his team sweater and put on some stripes and give us the AMA that maybe could have been when Wes McCauley had one scheduled years back. It was canceled. It never happened. So, Todd, this might be as close as we get, and I think it's definitely worth the view.
Sometimes I feel like the fans are kind of being smart. Kind of like, you know what? This is my game. This is my game. You're not calling that penalty in the corner. I would have. But now that you guys are all yelling about it, I'm not going to call that. I'm going to let him go head first into the boards. Now how do you like it? Tell me how to do my job.
Good stuff, man. Where to work?
Get in the box. It's the Scouting the Refs podcast. Read more at scoutingtherefs.com. Follow Scouting the Refs on Twitter, Instagram, and Facebook. Email the show at heyref@scoutingtherefs.com.
You're good, Michael.
Subscribe, share, and keep those